Welcome, guys, to another great episode of JR's Corner. This is episode 12. We have a legendary rugby specialist, coach, professor. I don't know, he has so many titles. Dr. Wolbert, Professor Wolbert Kraak. But without any further ado, Dr. Kraak, welkom hier zo bij mij.
Ja, thanks for the invite.
Als recht, prof. Hoe voelt het om hier te zitten? Ons is hier bij your old stomping ground, your old taster, die daar niet krijgen.
Ja, het is altijd lekker om terug te komen. Dus ik nou naar die gras kijk naar die memories. Voor mij coaching was me altijd door memories maken, relationship bouwen, connections. En het is net lekker om zo met jou hier te komen zitten, die ook een connection hebben. Ik denk dit is een van die video's kom ik invite is hier. So I think I'm always getting back to a rugby field is always special. And that's also what makes this interview special because it's next to a rugby field, and that's where I feel safe and I enjoy myself and I can be myself and you just be yourself and enjoy it.
Awesome stuff, Dokie. So I just for my listeners and for my kijkers, luisteraars daar buiten, I just want you to introduce yourself, man. Just give me a background of Prof Kraak for those of my viewers or new listeners that might not know who you are. I mean, the rugby community, they would definitely know.
Yes. Yeah, so that's coming. I think and that also played a big role in my development. I'm coming from a very small town called Mamre.
Yeah.
So it's along the west coast, next to Atlantis, and Pella, Darling, in between there. So I think that a town that played a hell of a lot in my development, and I think I'm one of those stories where it takes a village to develop someone, and I'm an output of that. So mom and dad still staying there, and my sister happily married with kids, and they also play that. My wife plays an important role in just having that support, that network, and you've got kids, so they're always special even if they upset you. And always have a liking for sport, and I think that's what also lured me to rugby and specifically coaching, because I think coaching is a role where you can really impact young men and to become better versions of themselves. And I studied along the way as well, and I think being a student of the game, always learning, and just to be how we want to improve, because you can't expect players to improve if you're not willing to grind and put in the effort. So that's in a nutshell. I've coached at amateur level, still looking for an opportunity to coach professionally, and then with a bigger purpose, it's just to impact young men.
100%. Okay, I know it's actually a great backstory. Very similar paths that we walked. Also coming from a small town as Ashton. So ek ken hy klein dorpie is nie almal kom altyd uit die klein dorpies uit, jy verstaan nie. En for me per se, I was also a product of a town, that created something, or a man, that came out of a small town to be able.
So that's why we connect.
Yeah, 100%. 100% was as 'n klein dorpie manne wat dan maar iets kom try doen dit in die groot stede.
And I think it's important coming from a small town, and I love going back home because my mom and dad still stays there. Most of my family is there.
Yeah.
But I think when coming from a small town, I think we've sometimes lost hope. And it's important for us that I don't want to use the word has made it, but it's important that we succeed, so that gives hope to them. Because that's I think coming from a small town, we're always grounded.
Yeah.
En as jy toe gaan, hy sal vir jou remind nie of jy kom wind gehad.
100%. Ja, dan trek jy op met hy mooi bakkie.
Ja, But so that for me is also, and one of the reasons why I strive to be successful is to give hope to my community.
Beautiful.
We need to give back, even if it's just giving back and giving hope.
Yeah.
Because our community's got a lot of challenges, but that shouldn't be seen as obstacle.
100%. That's beautiful. Yeah. And I just want to know, Dokie, next, moving on to your new opportunity, your new venture. If you can just maybe briefly touch on.
So I joined UWC on the 1st of September, and I've been asked this question quite a lot of times in the last 2 months. Why? I think for me, I can give you a couple of reasons, but reasons that stand out for me is that firstly, it's an opportunity. Coming someone, again linking on back to coming from a small town, giving hope. To become a full professor at 40, that is for me is to give hope to a town. And also for me, and again, it's not about my own story. There's similar stories to mine. So my intention was never to go to university.
Okay.
So I always had this intention to go work on these, because I had an interest in welding.
Yeah.
Always had this interest working on these oil rigs.
Yeah.
And they make lots of money, and that for me, that excited me, and I think the adrenaline of that. And linking onto that, so my intention was never to go to university, because I didn't pass with a matric exemption.
Okay.
So for me, I needed to do a bridging course at university in order to get to university. So that's just linking back to it, is to become a full professor was an opportunity. Secondly, was for me. So the last 2 years I've been at HOD at Sports Science at Stellenbosch, and one of the things that I always drive was diversity amongst our student population, because it seems like sports science is very white dominant, and for me I wanted to make a difference and change that profile. I think UWC gives an opportunity to just do it at a faster pace, and just giving back and impacting these young men and young women to become better versions of themselves. And then thirdly, I think there's a lot of potential at UWC. And I think they have the potential to become one of the best sports science departments in Africa, and in South Africa for that.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity. So for me it was self-development. I can hopefully make an impact. But yeah, at Stellenbosch I had good times. Yeah. It wasn't always easy, but things are coming here. But I enjoyed my 40 years at Stellenbosch, learned a hell of a lot, and hopefully I've impacted students along the way, and looking forward to impacting students as we go along. So that's how short.
100%, Prof. No, that was an awesome answer, amazing. I mean, I couldn't expect anything less from you. Prof, ek wil net by jou geluister het. Rugby en sport, jou liefde vir rugby. Waar kom dit vandaan? Jy kom van Mamre af, Darlingse wêreld, daai kante is mos wielpapier, né?
Nee, soos meer Kevin Passens.
Oh, Kevin Passens, okay.
Okkers, hulle, Clive. So dis daai manne.
Ja.
Kom.
Okay, so ek gaan nou maar dit 'n double banger question maak. Liefde vir rugby en inequality in sport in South Africa.
Ja, so liefde vir rugby is mos jy weet nou in 'n klein dorpie as jy klap op 'n Saterdag speel,
staan die dorp stil.
Dis exactly wat dit is. En so daar was altyd daai liefde, en as jy kyk na van my ma se kant af, my ma se broer was 'n rugby speler wat vir die klap gespeel het, my pa het so 'n bietjie gespeel. Maar daar was altyd daai liefde. Op skool het ek gespeel, maar ek het ook vroeg besef ek gaan nie Springbok. So die liefde vir rugby het altyd gegaan. Hoekom is verskillende spanne beter as ander spanne? Hoekom wen hulle? Dis nie net oor die uitslag nie, maar as jy kyk na, so ek altyd, dis kom ek hou nie van rugby kyk met 'n klomp mense om my nie. En jy kyk,
nou hoor jy die critics en die coaches
ek wil rugby kyk en ek wil inneem en ek wil gaan reflect op. So dis waar die liefde vir sport, en ek dink enig kyk jy as dit Wimbledon speel, maar die pad tennis en is cricket en daai goed, so dis maar deel van jou. So dis waar my liefde vir rugby gekom het, en ek dink rugby het vir my ook baie lewenslesse geleer. Die pik, en dan verstaan jy die rugbypad vat jou maar so. So daar is vir my baie lesse, en jy het 'n belangrike punt, en iets wat na in my hart is inequalities, and something iets wat ek baie oor outspoken was. En ek dink ons dat was baie onder die vergroot glas nou met George Floyd se afsterwe in Amerika, en toe dit oorgevoel na die bel internet. En die reality is still inequalities in sport. As jy net kyk na, daar's even inequalities in vrouesport, gelyk met ons mans. So, en dan as jy gaan kyk na disability sport in Suid-Afrika, daar's inequalities.
Baie.
So daar, dit is 'n issue wat aangespreek moet word, en ek dink dit strek baie weer as net rugby. Maar as iets wat, kom ons zoom in op rugby, ek dink, dis nog, as jy kyk net na die veld waar ek is in coaching, ek dink nog mense het nog nie vertroue in coaches van klere, reality. Ek dink mense het nou nog baie van rugby behoort aan ons, en ek weet nog steeds nie wie daar ons is nie, want as jy gaan kyk na die geskiedenis van rugby, hoe ver rugby strek in jou breingemeenskappe en die swart gemeenskap. En hoeveel spelers, as jy gaan kyk na die hoeveelheid spelers, klapspelers en klapafrikkers en klubs, en jy gaan vergelyk die spelers van kleur, die klubs en spelers van kleur, met jou wit clubs is dit oordonner en dit reflekteer nie binne in ons stelsel.
Ja.
So ek dink inequalities is iets wat die mense net gaan aanspreek deur praat, dis aksie.
Ja.
En ek dink die uitdaging in Suid-Afrika is nog, when we speak about transformation, we mean color. Everyone can transform, everyone can learn. You just need to address. And for me, when we're going to speak in a South African context about transformation is much broader than just making up the numbers.
Yes.
It's about access to facilities, access to resources, access to quality coaching, access. So that for me is vital. And we can't address the so-called transformation if we don't address those things. So it's much broader than just numbers.
Yeah.
And I think everyone looks at numbers, and I'm just reading on. I'm going to use two examples now, and both of them actually happened prior to the World Cup. And there's again this version of Siya Kolisi and Themba Bavuma, and they still ran the Quota players. But yes, if you look just at the Siya Kolisi, won a World Cup, won a British and Isles series. So what more do you need to prove people that you're there on merit? And this word merit has been freely used.
Yeah.
What is merit? It's almost a perception of what merit is.
Yeah.
We can only speak about merit in a South African context if the playing fields are level. Same resources, same support. Those factors that I alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
So for me, it's there's a lot of inequalities, and we can that can be a discussion on its own.
Yeah.
The reality is
that's a show on its own. Hy's 'n paar ure op sy eie.
And I think if we want to address the inequalities, we need to go much deeper than just touching the surface.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, no, that was actually an amazing answer. And I mean, net om te raak op hy ook in my eie selfe ervaring of as 'n speler, verstaan, ek bedoel, ek kom deur die ranks as 'n player wat obviously die opportunities gekry het, deur 'n goeie skool as Parel Gym gegaan, daar ook gesien die differences, obviously inequalities, you know, in terms of vanaf graad 8 af nou niks vir Parel Gym nou te whatever nie, maar daar was altyd net 2 players of color in die first team gewees.
Normally they played wing.
Yeah, so it was either a wing or was a forward.
Flank.
A wing of a flank of was maybe daar was 'n paar tight forwards gewees ook. But so daar was 2 gewees en in my graad 11 jaar was ons ook 2. In my matriekjaar was ons 2.
Ja.
Ek dink die system daai nou darma 'n bietjie gechange, maar in die meeste van die groot skole, ek wil sê Paul Boys hulle was eintlik rivals gewees. Maar hulle het eintlik 'n groter change gebring in terms of players of color. In the amount of players of color wat hulle in die eerste span het. Daai is net 'n small example.
Ja, nou wat jy boys I noem in tekens en vol spelers van kleur. So I attended Craven Week a couple of years ago. It was at Boys Eye. And I was sitting there and I was I was drinking a cool drink and I overheard coaches from Limpopo speaking about in the Western Cape they don't have issues with players of color because they can select. And we always struggle to fill up these teams with these, and we use the word quota players. And then my view was, then it's actually a coaching thing because you knew ahead of time that you need to develop players of color to fill up your team. So why didn't you put in the effort to go and develop that player, improve their skills? So then it's actually on you that those players' standard is not at a high standard. So for me, and that links back to the mindset. Do we select players just because we need to fill up the numbers, or we select them because we really want to select them? And how do you empower them? How do you back them? Because already a player of color, there's that brand. They've been branded as these quota players. So that's already okay. But am I here because I'm good enough, or am I here because I'm just need to fill up this team?
I think you would always have that how could I say, that chip on your shoulder to say that, listen, you always have to prove something, you know. You moet altyd jouself meer bewys as die next player player.
It's just coming back to the example that I used earlier, Themba Bavuma and Siya Kolisi, because Themba Bavuma at the moment is, if you look at the last 5 years in ODIs and Test cricket, he's been scoring the most runs.
Okay.
And still, you're not seeing good enough in your own country. Yes, there must be something wrong with these people. I really think that.
I just want to touch on just a little story of Siya Kolisi. In our Craven Week here, so I've known Siya since maybe under 13, because obviously you've seen him play, you know, for EP. I think he's been captaining EP since under 13, under 16, under 18, you know, going up. But in our Craven Week, our opener, ons het gespeeld teen OP in die opener. Yes, like it. Alright, ons het 'n geleiderspan hè. Groot, dis nou ons wat nou World Cup speel. Eben, Etzebeth. Ons verandero was letterlik Kitte, Frans Malherbe, okay, Gary Topkin.
Ja, Gary Topkin eske.
Eben, ja. Nog 'n paar, ja, Nizam Kaap, die name gaan Enrique Skroeder, daar was 'n hele klomp JP Du Plessis, nou so Craig Berry op, fullback. Maar so 'n geleiderspan gewees. Speel vir OP in die opener. We gave them 50. Boom. I think they had maybe 2 tries, something like that. Guess who's man of the match? Sia Kolisi.
I think he played 8 at that time.
He played 8, yeah. So he played 8.
Yeah.
He was man of the match. So every time he touched the ball, it was magic, and like it took at least 1 or 2 defenders to stop him. You know, he caused havoc at the breakdowns. So Sia was earmarked as a player to become a Springbok captain, you know, or to become a Springbok at least, you know. Yeah. So just yeah.
Yeah, and that for me is his story. I think there's a lot of lessons in there. It's hasn't been in a straight line. There's been lots of ups and downs.
Yeah.
But I think he's the one captain. No disrespect to the other captains that really brought this country together to support. And we shouldn't be we kan ons nie blind in die gesig staan. So sport unites the country 100%. For a certain while, and then we back to because of our mindset. But at least for this time, he's bringing us together. And we believe in a common cause. So that's what he's been great. And I think he's been a great ambassador for this country. But he doesn't get the credit for it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And another, to touch on that, basically, I know you've been very involved, by involved with the club rugby. So the club rugby in die Weskaap, ek weet jy het vir NTK na hoogtes toe gevat. Jy het vir St. George's na hoogtes toe gevat. Jy het by SK vir 'n kort tydjie sukses gebring vir hulle ook. Ek wil net luister by Prof, the gap between club rugby and professional rugby in South Africa. How do you think we can maybe bridge that gap? Because ek dink ons het so baie talent, verstaan ek. As ek net weet die ouens wat ek by die club rugby toe ek nou van die Leeu's af gekom het en ek kom begin 'n club rugby speel by SK Homes. En ek het 'n bietjie by Ashton United ook gespeel. Waar kan ons daai gap bridge tussen club en die professional ranks?
Ja, ek gaan dit nou.
That's a loaded question.
Ja, it's a very loaded question en daar's baie maniere om dit te beantwoord, maar ek dink daar moet geïnvest word in club rugby. En club rugby moet weer gesien word as 'n half kan ek sê 'n recruitment opportunity waar your club rugby is now it serves a much bigger purpose in just communities, but the chance of getting into a professional setup is quite slim because of the university setup, academy setups in South Africa. Yeah. But I'm just glad the Gold Cup is back this year. That gives club rugby opportunities. Yeah. Also what club rugby also needs to in reality is we need to pick up the quality conditioning. Yeah. Because at the current state, not 90% of your club players will make that step up to professional. Because that gap is too wide. So how do you narrow the gap? Again, as I said earlier, you address the inequalities. You address it. Provide support, provide resources, provide facilities, and that kind of thing. And I think is also to align the clubs with a bigger purpose and identify, because we, as a country, we're doing excellent at selecting players at a young age, that talent. But the risk of that is we don't cater for the late developer. Because we want talent now, but we don't identify potential. So that they might develop over 5 or 6 years. We want talent now. Yeah. And the risk of that is that a lot of our talented players, they leave the sport early. Yeah. Because if you just speak to students at universities, how many of them still play sport after school? They don't play. And so club rugby is an opportunity for your late developer to really to get seen. And there's a lot of examples of these where Francois Lowe that played residence rugby here and got pulled up. So there's a lot of if you go of that players that Kurtley Arendse, Grant Williams is now a great example. And for me, Kurtley is actually a more significant story coming from a school like Paulus Hubert.
He came through
Paulus Hubert.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he came to Paulus Hubert. Sure. Grant Williams came to Paul Jim. But if you look
at they come out of the same community.
Same community and Caden Moody. But for me, Kurtley's journey is a bit different because he comes from not a your traditional rugby, so-called rugby schools.
Yeah.
So under the guidance of Ep12, and it just shows you that community.
It's a shout out to the great
great Ep12. Yeah, and I think that we need to acknowledge that, and it's important that these communities get invested. And I might go off topic now, but I want to touch on something. That's my issue at the moment with recruiting players from communities, and then they go play for these top rugby schools, because you're taking role models from a community.
Yeah.
And for me is, why don't you invest in that community? If your focus, so-called focus, is development, why don't you invest? Because ek dink daar kan 20 uit die Parel uit Kirtley Arendse.
Ja.
En maar nou vat ons vir Kirtley daai community uit. Sê maar ek noem dit nou.
Yes.
Kirtley se journey is nou bietjie anders. Nou vat ons hom uit en ons vat hom na 'n skool soos Gasfontein toe. Ons steek hom uit die community uit en
Prof vat nou eintlik my mind straight na daai spesifiek high school.
En ek dink ons doen die kinders se onderrig aan. Want jy's 14, 15 dan moet jy in 'n koshuis gaan bly.
Yes.
En dis net daai sosiale netwerk, maar om terug te kom na klub rugby toe. Ek dink die Gold Cup is belangrik, maar dan moet we need to distinguish between what is a community club and what is a semi-professional club. Because the needs of a community club is completely different than a semi-professional. Like if I just compare SK and a St. George's versus a Hamilton's and a Falls Bay. They're playing in the same league next year, but their needs are completely different. And so we need to address that needs. And hopefully, and I don't think for the next 5 years we're going to produce players. But if we can put a system in place now that in 6-7 years' time we can produce players that will become Springboks.
Okay, touch on that question, Prof. The community club, like you say, SKU, St. George's, NTK, I would say that's also more like a university, but also like a bit of community club that also bringing out players out of the areas, your we say previously disadvantaged communities. Hoe kan ons daai clubs assist? Nie ek sê nou ons, maar die ouens met die swaar sakke.
I think it's
how can we?
Okay, money's not going to solve your problems, because there's enough examples of clubs that just got money. And I don't want to mention names. And there's clubs that went on to go Super A and then drop in a couple of years' time. So there's no continuity in the system. So for me, what do you invest? It's transport. That's your biggest expense. Medical is your biggest expense. And then facilities. So for me, and equipment. So if you can invest in those 4 things, you can add value to clubs. Because clubs like your Hamlets, your St. George's, they travel with 6 buses. And a bus is about 6,000 Rand over a weekend. So if a club can get a sponsor for a year just to cover their traveling, it's already one massive thing that they can support. They can find support. So I think money is not going to always solve the problem, because money is ons 'n ander ding. Geld is 'n ander ding. Maak mense mal. Geld maak mense mal. Dan spend ons geld op verkeerde goed en ons koop players hier en daar, and then we forget what is the bigger purpose of the club in that community. Is to serve that community, is to contribute to that community. But I think go identify the biggest expenses, cover that, and I think it will add value to a club.
Sure, amazing, And I mean, with the schools taking the players out of the Western Cape, just to touch on it, that was actually going into my next question, or my next, basically, just to touch on what you were saying. The schools that take these players out of the Western Cape, and the thing is, eventually they go on to play for the Bulls and the Lions and the Sharks. Mense vergeet hy ou kom by die Weskaap uit.
But what about, we only remember these that make it. What about the other 90% that don't make it?
Ek wat het nog nie gemaak het.
Yes, because how do we, so of course the program, and there's nothing wrong with catering just for the 10%. But imagine if you cater for that 90%, that 90% become that 3% that contributes. Because only 1% of the players after school get contracts. But so we cater for 1%. So what about the 99% that we should cater for as well?
And you know what the other thing is? This is now just this is obviously just outside of rugby. You know, obviously with rugby you get trained, you get conditioned, obviously to play the game. That's physically. Now you get the coaching. That's also on a decent level. So that's obviously the technical ability. You know how you're gonna to cultivate this talent or this potential. So, but the other thing is that they don't develop. I'm saying us as players that come into the hostels, because I was also taken from Ashton. I'm saying taken, not taken, but beheers gegee. Ashton Primary baie happy om 'n beheers te kry by Parel Gym. Verstaan jy? Great opportunity. Vir 5 jaar gaan Parel Gym toe. Nou is jy in 'n koshuis daar. Was jy geleer? Nie dat jy nie geleer is nie, maar mentally nie almal is altyd sterk genoeg obviously om hy te kan daai te kan carry nie. Ek sê nou sekere ouens kom uit van Woester af of kom van op Veldre, Vredendal, hy plekke. Nie al die laities kon dit gehandle. Die baie laities kom in die eerste jaar, hulle kry beurse, hulle is goeie sportmanne, maar dan val hulle uit die bus uit miskien die eerste jaar, tweede jaar. Nie almal kan in die koshuise bly nie. Nou, wat nou van daai ouetjies wat hulle kom van ver af, hulle kry ook nie die support van hulle ouers af, jy verstaan nie. So ek dink I think mentally, I would say to prepare players, there should be a system in place also. I think maybe I won't say primary schools or the high schools, maybe to assist players, you know, from a mental point of view.
Mental health is real. But I think just to get back to your, I think what plays a massive role for coaches of color, and so let me rephrase, players of color is that coming from small towns where we both come from.
Yeah.
So you're used to a certain way of doing things. Your mom is doing your ironing. Mom is doing your washing. You get a home cooked meal every night.
Yeah.
If you had a bad day, there's someone to speak to.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now you're in a race. So because wat jy eet is nie lekker nie.
Ja, die altyd die.
So you've been dropped. No one to chat with. So I think you're taking that whole support network. That for me is, if that's why I always question the reasoning behind it of the schools. I question that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're truthful.
Yeah.
Because these boys, why, if your focus was development, why are you taking talented boys out? Why not in your surrounding schools? Why do you travel 1,600 kilometers to go and recruit a boy? You take him out of his community. You're taking that role model out of that community. Why not, if your aim, as you believe, is development, why don't you invest that money
in your own people?
In your own community, or you say our development, our money, our focus is development. Why don't you invest it in that community? Because you can unearth, as I said earlier, 20 Kirtley Arons.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why Kirtley's inclusion for me is special, because it shows you that someone from a non-so-called rugby school. And I know Atul very long, and I know the effort that he puts in and the quality of his program, but he's not considered as a rugby school because where he's based. And for me, if we can strike that balance.
So you must say, if you say my Garsfontein moet maar invest in Paulus Joubert.
Exactly. Well, that's an example. That's a great example. And for me, I just think
die groot kontrak wat die Boland nou geslaan het met
I hope
if they can invest into those schools.
I hope so. I hope so.
Nah, 100%. That's actually, that would be something special. What do we still have on the menu? Okay, something this is now off the topic. I know you actually touch on the mental health aspect as well of athletes and obviously how it affects them. I just want to know by you, Coachy, guys that you've coached, maybe played with, seen as a youngster grow up, some of the older legends that you thought was some of the best players. If you can mention a few, honorable mentions.
Where do I go back? Because I used to watch SA Cup with my dad, and then there was the guys like Irvin October, Fahmi Solomons, that is the SK legend. Those are normally guys that, Alistair Kutsia, those are guys that stood out for me. Ivan Jacobs.
Yes.
So
what position?
Ivan Jacobs played centre for Boland.
Okay.
So he's from Kalmar.
Okay.
So some of the people that I look up to.
And
people that I coach with, I think, I've coached with a lot of guys. But if I need to mention a few, and sorry, I apologize if I missed.
The thing is, there's thousands of guys that's gonna look at maybe
people that I look up to and I enjoyed coaching with is the likes of Patrick Boyson, Winston Bart from Strand, then Smith Pieterse, and then I had the privilege of coaching with Winston and Irvin.
Nice.
So that was special, and then people like Hanu van Vieren, that was one of my students that I had the privilege to coach with. And those are people that I learn a lot from, and you also about players that I coached. There's a couple, but I'm gonna distinguish between players and then leaders as well. And then there's one guy that's in the middle. I think talent-wise, the best player that I coached with, and I think this player deserved a shot at a high level was Ramiz Osman.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the most talented player that I've coached.
Aussie.
So then if I go, someone with leadership capabilities and a player, Brandon Grant, that played for me at NTK. If I just go on talent, at St. George's, there was Alvino Anthony, a loose
Yeah.
forward that I think had the ability.
Yeah.
And then someone that for me, leadership is Isidore Amin that was my captain at
Yeah.
St. George's. Is someone what stood out for me is his humbleness. It's not about him.
Yeah.
And just how he inspired people. And he will be the first to admit he's not the best rugby player, but he's someone that really brings a team together.
Yeah.
And then linking onto that, he's actually a player. He was much older than me when I coached him, but I think if he had the opportunity early in his career, he's a Clive Mayer.
Yeah.
Not your fancy, your hard grinder doing the hard work.
Yeah.
But if you had to ask me one player, I think Ramiz Osman.
Yeah.
I think it's a player that I think
Ozzy Young, yes. You know what? Just Ozzy. Wow, that guy. I've seen him because I had the privilege to play with him as well. Coming from, but at that time, I mean, SK was actually just a shout out to SK almost. They gave me a home at a time when I was, I would say I was a bit low, and I came from the Lions. I wouldn't say my contract ended at the Lions. Like they didn't renew it. I was at the Kings for a bit that time, and then the Kings was going through their own situations. So then I was sitting between a rock and a hard place, Am I going to start working? Am I going to study further? Where will I play now, So I ended up at SK Homers. I mean, I got the opportunity to play there. First night of training, me and my dad actually just went there. I was net deur gery en gaan praat met Mr. Khan. Mr. Khan en ons het 'n bietjie gaan gesels met hulle. And I saw this boy. They were busy training and like maybe the width of the field of playing touches. And he got the ball, but he threw a pass, like a no-look pass. Just whoop, but maybe over 20 meters. Pinpoint. I was like, who is this guy?
That's nearly 8 years ago. Right?
Yeah, that's about 8 years. I
I
was like, yes, this guy can pass a ball like that. And then we started playing, and then I realized, wow, this guy is really special. I think it's that touches.
It's special, and you touch on SK. Personally, SK is also a club that's really, for me, in my development as a coach. So I went there being Christian and going into a Muslim club, predominantly Muslim, just for me, how you accepted you.
Yes.
I think that aided my development.
Yeah.
So myself and Hanu, we went there and we actually did the Ramadan with them, which was quite special.
Yeah.
And we did that tradition of theirs on Groot Potterkos.
Oh yes.
The one Saturday, which was special. But what's special about that community is, and thanks for the titis for all the kusistas there in the boek.
The kusistas and the samosas.
And all those people. I think it aided my development. And I'm still, if I get these people, and I bump into them, it's always special.
Yeah.
So that club really assisted me with forming. Yeah. And there's actually a lot of overlap in the religions.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you look at now what's happening currently in our world, and where what's the Palestine and Israel thing, and I think there's actually a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
And it's that shaped me to become a better Christian.
Yeah.
And that experience, that 8 months was something that I'll always be grateful for. And just the support and how hard that Titis work for that club and the people around that club.
Yeah.
And their passion. And I've had the same experience at my home club at Hamlets.
Yeah.
Same experience at St. George's. And for me, that's just, it's much bigger than just a club. It's much bigger
it's a family.
It's much bigger than the scoreboard on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes, that's important to them.
Yeah.
Never my verkeerd verstaan nie. But it's much bigger.
Yeah, no, 100%. SK is really, it's a team that's near and dear to my heart, and to me. And I mean, I've made lifelong friendships, through them, the management staff, fans, people, supporters, it's really a team that it really, they grow on you, And ek wil net, SK Homers was great en ek het van my beste rugby daar gespeel. Eerlik te wees, ek het gekom van die Leeu's af, ek het 12 gaan speel vir hulle en ek het definitief van my beste rugby en deur hulle toe kry ek 'n kontrak om in Roemenië te gaan speel. So hulle was die springboard vir my gewees om weer, sal sê, professional rugby te gaan pursue in 'n ander land. So, Prof, we're getting near to the end of our conversation. I mean, yes, I think this it could be a longer, and I'll definitely get you on in the future, when we have more rugby conversations and sporting conversations. But Rugby World Cup, I mean, I don't want to start from the beginning, but business end that we're going into now. Your predictions, maybe.
Predictions is tough. After this weekend, I've only got 2 out of 4, so maybe I'm the wrong person to ask about predictions. But I think for me, this World Cup, I like an underdog, and
Yes.
for me, success stories of this World Cup, it's just the brand of rugby that Portugal played.
Sure, beautiful.
I think it was special. I've got friends in Portugal.
Yeah,
And so after every game, I just chatted to them and said, "Yes, you well done,
amazing. Yeah,
well done on the brand." Then
Yeah.
Chile at the first 2 rounds, and I think
yeah,
just you could see the tier 2 nations just not able to withstand that bumps and bruises
Yeah.
for 4 rounds, but they
Yeah.
played an exciting brand. Uruguay surprised me.
Yeah.
Namibia was a bit disappointing.
yeah, definitely.
I think another country, a small country, Georgia,
Yeah,
was a bit disappointing as
yes.
well. But
Compared to the previous World Cup,
compared to
man.
previous and
Yeah.
the build-up and the opportunities they
Yeah.
get. But in reality, I think currently tier 2 nations will always struggle at the World Cup
Yeah.
because they don't play rough rugby and they don't have enough support.
Yeah.
You spoke earlier about the inequalities about sport in South Africa, and that's inequality in world rugby.
World Rugby, yeah.
Yes, our tier 2 nations don't play enough rugby.
And the thing with Portugal is they basically playing with club players. you
Club
know?
players. There's
Club
a
players.
dentist that's playing in the team, so he had to take time off his practice to go
Yeah.
and prep for the world. And for me, that is great.
Yeah,
It's great for rugby, but
Yeah.
world rugby needs to put their hands in the pocket and support these countries more. Coming to the business end, I think countries like Portugal, not Portugal, but I think Ireland will be disappointed.
yeah, sure.
You're dominating rugby in between the major tournaments and not getting success.
Yeah,
Now I need to wait another 4 years.
Yeah.
France the same.
Same
and,
with France, yeah.
so, and it comes down to the teams that take their opportunities. And I think New Zealand, I've always said 3 teams for me would be Ireland, France and New Zealand would be my top 3 teams.
Yeah,
And I've said it from the start, if South Africa can get past the quarters, we're in with a good shot to win it.
Yeah.
So I was a bit worried about the age of our players.
oh yeah,
Yes, we're experienced, but we're also 4 years older.
yeah, 100%.
So that plays, and our recovery takes a bit longer.
Yeah.
But after this weekend, I think we'll get a New Zealand South Africa final.
Sure.
I think that's what everyone was hoping
for, yeah. 1995 all over again.
95.
Manny Lobok starting the drop goal.
Yeah, and that's
from the 22
Yes.
or from the halfway.
Yes, I hope. That's one of the players that I actually wants to do well this year because he's talented.
Yeah, no, he actually made a video not too long ago about Manny and just
No,
where he
he's-
came from, and the scrutiny that everybody was giving him. And I mean, people don't understand where he came from, and the coaches het hom nie gebekkie. Verstaan jy? Ek bedoel, Jake White, ek weet nie was Jake al by die balle uit nie, maar die balle het hom, hy was second string, hy was 15, hy was 10, Sharks, Cowan, Bosch voor hom gewees, 15-10. Toe moes hy na Dobbo toe gekom het en toe Dobbo het gesien.
Yeah, so there's
Dobbo
two
wat-
things, and you touch on it: trust
Yeah.
and then game time. That
Yeah.
makes a difference.
Yeah.
That makes a massive difference, and I think Mani, talented boys, but a lot of the times, a lot of people, and if you go back in history, James 2007 wasn't a goal kicker.
Yeah.
So everyone's got this perception that your
Yeah,
team
no,
needs
we
to
had
be good.
we had Percy and we
Percy,
had
yeah, so-
Frans Steyn.
Frans
So
Steyn that
there
could
was
for Paul, so-
I mean, two. There was distance kicker and accurate
Yeah,
kicker.
so your fly-halves, yes, traditionally your fly-half would be your kicker,
Yeah.
but also other
Yeah,
positions.
but I mean, there used to be
Yeah.
what Scotland,
So
John
Gavin,
Eales,
Gavin Hastings,
Gavin Hastings, John
yeah.
Eales. It was different.
Yeah,
positions,
Matt Burke,
Yeah.
Sterling Mortlick, and there's
Exactly.
examples that your fly is not your kicker.
Yeah.
So that's great. But I hope for Mani's sake he gets back again in the semis,
Yeah.
and he plays because there's a difference in style. So when we play, so on Saturday on Sunday he was the 10. We scored 3 tries.
Yeah.
And when Pollard came on, we played a different game. And
Different
again,
game,
nothing
yeah.
against Pollard because
Yes.
he's got certain strengths.
Different assets.
But
yeah.
I think as a combination,
Yeah.
they'll do well.
yes,
For South
definitely.
Africa, if you
Yeah.
and,
12-10, you mean?
maybe I don't think they had enough time for Pollard at 12, so I won't risk him at 12.
Yeah. And Damon is playing well at 12.
Damon is playing well,
Yeah.
but maybe Pollard coming on last 25 minutes. We need a kick from the
Slotting
touch.
that 3
Yeah,
points.
so
I
I
mean, 9
think-
points.
But that's something we need to acknowledge as well, that the Springbok coaches they're giving Mani freedom to play.
Yeah.
But I think the most vital player for me personally going in from a South African perspective is Bongi.
Oh yeah.
Because if we lose Bongi, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
If we lose Bongi early in the game, and no disrespect to Dion,
Yeah.
but I don't see Dion throwing. We 7.5 points behind, kicks out 5 meters from the try line, back ball to more.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening under pressure.
Yeah.
So everyone is raging about Tonga. He had a 100% success record, but he was never put under pressure. So Bongi is actually the most important player for us going forward. Because South Africa is a team that uses lineouts to give them momentum and lineouts for them more. So they want to get into the 22.
Yeah.
So you don't want to lose that ball.
Yeah. 100%. And you know what? Another player that maybe because I know him personally is Kwacha.
As an impact player,
yes,
but
impact
not
player.
As a starting,
not a starting player, but he's that player that will give you, like he showed it over the weekend, pressure game, comes off the bench, makes a carry, almost breaks through 2-3 defenders. You know what I'm saying? So for me, Kwacha is a really important guy coming from the bench. You know, obviously because he can play all positions.
Yeah, and Ox. We
saw that
mention Ox. Ox and Che. I think after Kitshoff, when Kitshoff moves on now, I think it will be opportunity for Ox maybe to cement his place as our number one loose head. But Ox, every game he came on, he made an impact.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will go again back to Ox and Trevor as the two props coming off the bench.
Yeah.
And to make that impact, because that is a combination against in the other games made a massive impact. But I personally, there's two players, but Amani and then Bongi, but I think Bongi going forward is going to be our most important player.
Yeah.
If you want.
You know what, the rugby episode we had to do a separate one because there's so many things I actually want to talk about. But I'll just get to the conclusion now. And I mean, I see we're running on about 40 minutes already. I need to get back to work also.
Yeah, the hustle is real.
The hustle is real. Until I can do this full time, we'll get there, you know.
Hopefully, God this episode.
We just need to get that sponsors.
Yeah.
All right. So, conclusion. Do you have a motivational word for the youngsters out there, aspiring coaches? I know you're still waiting for your opportunity as a pro coach.
Yeah, I think, and it's something that I try and live by, and something that my late grandfather used to tell us, but I didn't know the meaning of it since I got to university.
Yeah.
And he said, it's important to know where you're heading.
Yeah.
But it's more important to know where you come from. And that for me is so profound, because where you come from, it's that sense of community, that values, that principles that you live by. And for me, that is your foundation. And I think coming from small towns, it's even more important for us.
Yeah.
Because you, as I said earlier, you need to give hope. You need to give hope when there's never hope in a community.
Yeah.
And if you fail the community, not just your family.
True.
So for me, so that's something that I try and live by. And every time when I make a decision or I try and work harder, that's what I got in the back of my mind. I like to wat in Korhammerstraat speel. But it looks up to you. You give him hope to give his best.
Nice.
So.
Okay, I just want to thank you for joining me, you know, taking out of your time, you know. I know you gave me an opportunity to taste how it is to be a coach first time, and I'd always remember that.
Okay, pleasure.
And for everyone that's watching this episode, like, follow, subscribe at Spotify and YouTube. Check out Docky's work, Wolbekrak and WJK coaching.
Yeah, I haven't been touched on that.
Here we go.
Yeah, because that's something that it's a group of mates that we started this. It was also to give back.
Yes.
And our vision is to empower coaches, because if we believe coaches can empower people.
Yeah.
And if we can inspire 10 coaches, our motto is we can inspire 100 players.
Beautiful.
And that's how you inspire communities and you transform community.
Yeah.
So just shout out to the WJK team.
This episode will be on the Boland rugby group. Ethel is the Mr. Ethel
what a legend.
He's the administrator of the group. So I posted some of my videos there.
That's some of the people. So I know Mr. Antong a great time now, and I've seen his work.
Yeah.
And we actually did our level 3 together, and just not rugby thing, but the human side.
Yeah.
And I think that's the type of teachers that we need.
Yeah.
So a shout out to him as well, and someone that inspires me.
Sure.
And just to do.
I actually need to get to him, to Paul as well, and so we can have a good conversation.
That's a legend.
Great stuff, man. But guys, thank you for this. This is episode 12. Okay, that's it.
Thanks. Oh.
So jy sit vir daai laaste enetjie daar.
Die foto.
Ja. Daar het jy nou begin, dis is episode 12.
Wat moet ik zeggen?
So gaan dit weer dankie. En dan soos jy nou gekat het.
Ik kan niet doen wat ik ga zeggen. Dat is episode 12.
Ja.
Oké, baie dankie voor die
Dankie, sir.
episode. Charles Corner, episode 12. Dr. Wilbur Kraak. There we go.